What is up, guys? It's me, Medic X21, doing another like a build video kind of thing. I'm gonna try not to ramble, but it's just kind of how it works, so probably gonna ramble a lot. I'm trying two different camera view things. I'm gonna kind of maybe mix them together. I'm not sure how I'm gonna do it yet, but I thought it'd be neat and interesting. Get right into it for today's video. I came up with an idea that I was wondering how cheap could I build a computer using parts from Newegg? I know that you can get stuff on eBay, and I do like eBay for certain things, and I'll probably be doing something in the future, changing up with that stuff. But I wanted to see, like, when it came to Newegg, like, how cheap could I build a computer using new only parts? So I came up with like a bunch of rules, and then my goal was to build a computer kind of as cheap as I possibly could, but it still had to reasonably be able to game. So before I get just all over the place, we'll discuss some of the rules. So some of the rules, the budget, probably one of the biggest things. So it's the budget. It had to be a budget that is achievable by many. And when I say achievable by many, there's always going to be somebody who just still won't be able to afford it, but they're probably somebody who maybe shouldn't be building a computer or a gaming computer, but to each their own. So I said it has to be under $500. Like, definitely has to be under 500. And in fact, I actually wanted to push the 400 target goal, 400 or less for the build. We'll talk about some of the parts that could be adjusted to make this build even less, but I was shooting for like the $400 range. Now, with that said, being that target goal, the performance still had to do 1080p gaming. 1080p is just kind of the standard resolution. Somebody who's targeting this type of price range probably doesn't have a 1440p monitor, is probably not using 144 hertz monitors, so 1080p 60 fps target resolution gaming. When it came to the game settings, I wanted to do high settings, but obviously there's just going to be certain games where medium is going to be what's achievable on it. I didn't want to build something that was, yeah, we can run 1080p on super low potato settings, because nobody's going to enjoy that. That's just not enjoyable. So I wanted to get high settings at 1080p, close to 60 FPS as much as I possibly could on the games that I feel like a lot of people would be playing in this price range too. But I benchmarked a bunch of stuff, so we'll talk about that. Another important factor in this build was it had to have an upgrade path. So obviously we're going Ryzen with this. With Ryzen, you end up with right now 3 different generations on the majority of motherboards. So I needed an upgrade path, so we're gonna go a cheap CPU now and be able to upgrade to something better later on. So with that, when it came to my parts, I went with a CPU and a dedicated GPU. In my benchmarks, I'm going to compare the Ryzen 3400G. It's a CPU and APU, well, it's a CPU and GPU, it's an APU. And I'm going to compare that because the price of my CPU and GPU was only about $10 more than the 3400G. And I'm finding a lot of, when I search online for these like super budget oriented builds that are in this price range, I'm finding that they're going with the 3400G. And I personally, I have got one and I use it. I don't know if I would call that like a gaming computer. Like, yes, it can play games. It can certainly do better than like probably any other APU or out there. But the problem is that it's that step just before you've got a gaming computer, in my opinion. To me, a gaming computer, it's got your CPU and you've got your GPU. When it's still all in one, until we can really just hit that crest of where the performance is just so much better, it still, to me, just really isn't a gaming computer. It's a computer that can do some light gaming. And I keep seeing them as like budget gaming computers, and I don't feel like that's very fair, because as you're going to see, I built something at the same price range, and the gaming performance, we'll look at the benchmarks to find out if it was worth it. So without rambling, because I am a pro rambler, Let's talk about the parts real quick. For the motherboard, I went with the ASRock B450M. I went with this motherboard because it was $59.99, free shipping. It offered a $10 rebate, putting the price at $49.99. For the CPU, I went with the Ryzen 3's 1200, 4-core, 4 threads. It was the cheapest, at the time, it was the cheapest CPU, and it was $59.99. It did have $290 for shipping, but it was the cheapest CPU, and it still offered 4 cores. I would have liked hyper-threading, but the only thing on Newegg that had 4 cores and hyper-threading put us at, I think, the over $100 mark. And when we were trying to keep that budget as tight as possible, once we add that other, you know, $50 to $60, we just start getting to we've pushed our budget too much. So I went with the cheapest CPU. Originally, I was going to go with one of the AMD Athlons. That's actually what started the idea of this project for me. Was I saw them, they were like $60, but they were dual cores, 4 threads, and I was like, well, what's the cheapest thing I could build, and what kind of upgrade path, but what kind of gaming performance? And literally, maybe a day or two before I actually went to buy all the parts, I was scripting all this and getting it ready, crunching numbers and all that stuff. And literally, like a day or two before, the 1200 came back up for sale, and it was actually priced less than the Athlons. And I was like, well, I can go two cores and 4 threads, or I can go 4-core, 4 thread, and we can put it right on Ryzen versus the Athlon. People are going to be more familiar with Ryzen than they will with Athlon. So I will probably get an Athlon chip to play around with because I have not used one in years. But I figured for this build, I'm going to stick with the Ryzen because a follow-up video to this is going to be, I'm going to try to sell this. So that should be really interesting for us. But we'll get back into it. So we went with the Ryzen 3 1200 4-core, 4-thread CPU. I went with 1 stick of RAM, 8 gigs from G.Skill 2400 megahertz RAM. When it came to the RAM, the prices were kind of all over the place. I went with the G.Skill because that's actually something that I had, and I priced it at what it was going at the time. It's about the same as what all the others was, so $26.99 for 8 gig stick, and that still gives us 1 more slot available to put us at 16 gigs, which is what I would recommend for a gaming computer. But if you're trying to go like as low as possible on your build, I would start with 8, and then just when you have the extra $30 later on, get the exact same stick for 16 gigs later on. Something like this build, you're not going to be streaming, you're probably not going to be recording, not going to be doing too much like that, at least at the start. So 16 gigs, you're going to be fine. And then you can always readjust and upgrade later on if you end up needing even more than 16 gigs. When it came to the case, I went with the Rosewill FBM X1, the Black Steel Edition. That was because it was $26.99 and free shipping. And that was the cheapest case by almost 10 or 15 bucks by anything else. And it had the side panel window because, again, one, we're going with the cheapest thing, but I'm also going to try to sell this later on. So it's important to budget everything, but also make sure it looks good. When it came to the power supply, you know, you can only get lucky for so long. So the power supply that I initially got was the Rosewill RD 450 watt. It had a $10 promo code, so it was only $19.99 and had free shipping. 450 watt power supply, had everything that I needed, looked ugly as hell, but it had good reviews and it was going to be able to do everything we needed. I checked all the power and all the wattage of all of our parts, and we were totally fine with a 450. And I got it, and I got everything set up, and this one ended up not working. So if you had gotten lucky and you got this for 20 bucks, that would have been a steal, because the next cheapest power supply, the one that I ended up having to go with, was a Raidmax XT 500 watt power supply, and that power supply was $34.99 with $4.99 shipping. So double the price on the power supply. It is what it is. You're going to see in the video that I actually don't even have the Raidmax in yet, because I'm still waiting for it to come. So I had to do the build, and I had to do all this stuff with like the images of the bad power supply. Then I had to pull that, and I had to grab a spare power supply and use that so I could get all the benchmarking done, and I'm still waiting for it. It should be in at some point today, but I need to get this recorded, so I don't even have the Raidmax power supply yet. And I'm still in the process of RMAing the Rosewill one, which is lost by UPS right now, so good thing it was only 20 bucks. When it comes to the SSD, I got a 128 gig Team Group MS30 M.2, and I got it for $17.99 free shipping. Pretty happy with that price. I've used it quite a few times. I don't have much more to say on the SSD. When it comes to the hard disk drive, that just came in yesterday, but like I said, I got all this recorded last week, so I don't even have the videos of it or pictures or anything, but I did get a 2 terabyte hard disk drive for $49.99 free shipping. I feel like $49.99 for a 2 terabyte drive, pretty solid deal. It's a Seagate BarraCudo, 7200 RPM, 256 megabyte cache, so I didn't, like, it's not a super cheap drive, it just is a good inexpensive drive. So there's a difference, because I could have gone with like a 5400 RPM, but you notice that difference. I feel like 72 for storage is kind of like the minimum. So I've used the Seagate BarraCudo 2 terabyte drive more than once, and I'm happy with that. 5400 RPM, I don't feel like I would have liked at all. Even though it's just for the games, I still don't feel like I would have liked that. So I waited for the sale, knew it was going to go on sale again, and I got it for $49.99 free shipping. The graphics card, that was hard. I really priced and performanced a lot of things, and I hemmed and hawed, and I didn't want to go with a 570. But when I factored in like the CPU and the budget and everything, and then I ended up finding this card, I ended up realizing that this was probably the best card to go with if I was getting something from Newegg. So let me explain. The card that I went with was the XFX RS XXX RX 570 4GB card. Normally I probably wouldn't have gone with that card. I would have gone over to eBay, because I could have got a 1070 for like $175, and a 1070 would have blown this card away. However, this particular card was originally priced at $129.99. It had a $10 instant rebate, which put it at $119.99, and it also has a $20 mail-in rebate, which puts the graphics card, provided I get my rebates, it puts my graphics card at $100 for a brand new graphics card. What's nice is getting from Newegg and stuff, if there's any issues, we've got our 30-day, 90-day warranty, whatever Newegg offers. Plus it's brand new, so I've got the manufacturer's warranty. So I've got solid warranty when it comes to this card. There's only $100, but I feel like if I was not giving myself the rules of doing an only from Newegg build, I probably would have gone on eBay. And although it would have been overkill for the CPU, I think I would have gone with probably a 1070. But I would have either gone with the 1070 for $175, because then I just have to worry about like a CPU upgrade later on. But I would have also looked the used market for the RX cards. There's a huge used market, and you can get these 570s for like $80. So I could have saved more money on there. The only difference is you're probably not going to have all those warranties. For 20 bucks more, I got all these warranties. I have the comfort of all the warranties. But you can get like these 570s and 580s for like around $80. I've been pricing them a lot for the last few days, because I'm probably going to do a follow-up build to this to see how much more performance I can get for the same or lower price of this build. So I've been pricing a lot of these graphics cards and CPUs. You can actually get the 1400s, the Ryzen 1400s, for about $60 to $80. The 1400s and the 1600s are going between $60 and $80, which is about the same price as what this 1200 was. So you can get 4 cores and 8 threads for only like maybe $20 more. So eBay may be your choice for your CPU, and eBay may be your choice for your GPU. I've gotten lots of graphics cards from eBay. I'm happy with getting stuff from eBay. If it doesn't work, the return on eBay is pretty solid. So, like, I mean, I don't know what to say. Like, I'm fine with getting graphics cards and CPUs off of eBay. So when it comes to like the cost, with all these parts, the PSU we had to go with, not the one that I was trying to get for 20 bucks, we end up with a total cost of $396.92. If you factor in, for me, shipping and tax, then I'm at $438.21. If I get my $30 in rebates, then it only cost me $408.21. Now, if you're in a particular area where you didn't have to worry about like shipping and taxes and you get your rebates, then you could have built this for like just under $370. So if you didn't have to worry about shipping, you don't got tax, you get your rebates under $370, like this is a system that is a 4-core, 4-thread, dedicated GPU, has an SSD for your operating system, and has 2 terabytes of storage, and it was less than, like, quite a bit less than $400 if you didn't have to worry about the taxes and shipping, which there's lots of places that don't. I live in New York, so it is what it is. For me, even though, like, it's still, when I get these rebates, it's still going to be just over $400 for this build. And I feel like when I benchmarked it, I felt super happy with it. So when I look at some of these people who have gone with like the APU builds for just over $400, got a solid gaming computer. Honestly, you could have saved a little bit of money. Like if you're super stuck on money, you could either opt out of not getting the SSD first or not getting your 2 terabyte drive first. Deciding which one you really need. The operating system, you're kind of stuck because the operating system really should be on the SSD. So if you install your operating system on your hard drive, you're going to have to reinstall your operating system later on. But if you can tolerate a slower startup time and some slower stuff, and you want to game and you need lots of room for games, then you could go with your 2 terabyte drive and get an SSD later on, and that would put you under $400 for all of this. So under $400, I mean, I don't know what to say, man. That's I felt pretty happy with this build for under $400. I'd be like, I think the icing to the cake is that this has an SSD and it's just over $400. So I don't know. I was pretty stoked with it. The benchmarks, I will show you in a little bit, are pretty great. I've rambled through with the parts. I want to show you the build and show you how it came out. It is a very functional computer, but you're gonna see with this case, it's not a beautiful computer, but it's a function over fashion computer, a super budget oriented computer. So take a look at the computer real quick. So it's definitely not going to win any awards for like the most prettiest budget computer or anything like that. But when you factor in the cost, like it definitely becomes okay at that price. It's almost like a stealth LAN build, and that might be how I list it when I go to sell it. Is stealth high settings gaming computer, something like that, you know, because it's got the window, you can see it's got the components, it's good, but it doesn't have like flashy RGB or anything like that. It looks good, and I say it benchmarks okay, but truly, how does it perform? Well, conveniently for me, I have a 3400G APU available to use as a benchmark, because if you've watched some of my other videos, I have a server computer which I switched over to a Ryzen build because I may, if I want to upgrade later on to something with more cores, I wanted something that could do that for me. So I went with the 3400G because it gave me 4 cores and 8 threads. So I have that system still set up. So the 3400G has 16 gigs of RAM. When it comes to everything else, I used the same SSD. I did not use the SSD that I purchased here. I actually have a different SSD that I set up so that I could use for the benchmarking to keep things like as the same as possible. So I used that SSD between the two computers for the benchmarking. I did all these benchmarks, and I made like some sort of graphs for you guys to see. And you know, if you're a numbers person, you might like this. I will tell you that the 3400G, when it came to CPU only performance, it obviously did much better than the 1200. However, as a gaming computer, numbers speak, man. Take a look at them. Hey guys, it's me, Medic, during edit time. I have realized that this video is way longer than I had anticipated, so I'm going to go ahead and end it here, and I'm going to make a part 2 video for all of the benchmark stuff, because I've got a lot of benchmarking stuff to add to this, and I feel like you guys are going to enjoy that, and we're just too long of a video if I try to include that. So I want to say thank you for watching the video. Don't forget to subscribe and let me know what you guys think, and let's start figuring out some ideas for some future videos. But again, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys on the next one.